If you're studying for the California bar exam, one of the smartest things you can do is to understand where the points actually are. The California bar exam does not test everything equally, and if you study everything equally, you're wasting time. In this video, I am going to break down the topic weightage according to the most heavily tested topics so you know what to prioritize and how to study strategically. Let's start with civil procedure, a subject where the strategy matters as much as memorization. So, the biggest takeaway from this chart is the two areas dominate. One is pretrial procedures and the other one is motions. Each is at 22%. That means together, these two topics make up almost half of the civil procedure multiple choice questions. That means discovery, case management, motion to dismiss, and summary judgment are the absolute must knows. Next, coming to the medium weightage topics under civil procedure. So these are up to 9% each. That covers state law and the Erie Doctrine, trial, judgments, appeal, and review. These topics test whether you understand how a case moves from filing from all the way to the final resolution. And the last, the foundational topics, which are at each 4%, it covers federal jurisdiction, personal jurisdiction, venue, service of process, and the last is removal and remand. So these are not like where most of the civil procedure questions are, but these are topics which cover some of the percentage. So the bottom line is that master pretrial procedure and motions first. That is where most of the points in the civil procedure are. Now, let's move to the constitutional law, where the weightage is even more revealing. Here, the dominant topic is the individual rights, which alone accounts for 50% of the constitutional law questions. It includes equal protection, due process, First Amendment, and level of scrutiny. Here, half of the constitutional law questions lies here. And the remaining topics are distributed basically very fairly. Here, the separation of powers and judicial review are 17% each, and federal state relations are 16% each. So, the important topics, but none come close to the individual rights. So, the bottom line is if you are overwhelmed by the constitutional law, start with the individual rights. That is where the most of points are. Next up is contracts, one of the most predictable topics in the exam. Here, the highest weightage topics are two, which clearly dominate. First is formation, which is at 25%, and then comes formation, breach, and excuse, which is again 25%. So these two topics make 50% of the contract law MCQ questions. Next comes the medium weightage topics. It includes defenses to the formation and enforcement, which is at 13%, and remedies also at 13%. And lastly, the lower weightage topics are gap fillers and parallel evidence rule, which is about 6%. So here, the bottom line is if you clearly understand how contracts are formed and breaches are analyzed, then you're halfway through the contracts. Now, let's shift to real property. So what is unique is that there is no dominant topic. Each is evenly distributed. So here, the ownership, non-possessory interest, contracts related to land, titles and deeds, and the last, mortgages and security interest. Each is at 20%. So the bottom line in the real property is that you cannot skip anything because you cannot judge which is the major area. So you'll have to cover most of it. Coming to criminal law and criminal procedure. So each covers 50%. But here again, under each also there is a distribution which is unevenly distributed, unlike real property. Here the highest weightage topics are crime against persons, crime against property. Each is at 12%. That means homicide, assault, theft, robbery, burglary, these are absolute core topics. And then coming to constitutional criminal procedure, right behind those are Fourth Amendment, search and seizure, which is at 9%. Then Fifth and Sixth Amendment, that is also at 9%. So these comes under the 9% bar. And mid and lower weightage topics, these are defenses, which is at 7%. Then parties to the crime, which is again 7%. And inchoate offenses, which is at 6%. So the general principles come around 6%. Now, the key takeaway is that focus first on the crime against persons and crime against property and constitutional procedures. If you cover this and you still have time, then come to the next ones. So, that is how you're going to cover the most heavily tested topics on criminal law and criminal procedure. Now, let's talk about evidence, one of the most rule driven and predictable on the MBE. Here, the highest weightage topic, relevance, is the single most tested evidence rule in the evidence law. That is at 32%. And right behind it is presentation of evidence, which is at 25%, and hearsay, which is again 25%. So, together, these three topics make up over 80% of the evidence law questions. Then comes the lower weightage topics, which is privilege and public policy exclusions. And the last is best evidence rule. Each covers about 9%. So, here the bottom line is if you feel evidence law is overwhelming, then focus on relevance, hearsay, and presentation, where the points actually are. And then, if you feel that you are well equipped with these topics, then come to the next ones. Let's wrap up with torts. Here, the most weightage topic is negligence. It alone makes up 50% of the tort law questions. And secondary topic is intentional torts, which come about 18%. And the last topic here, which is smaller weightage, is product liability, strict liability, and other torts, which each appear at about 8%. So, here, the bottom line is that if you master negligence, you're already halfway to success in torts MCQ questions. So, understanding topic weightage lets you study smarter, not longer. So, start with the highest weightage topics, get comfortable with those, and then come to the smaller weightage topics because strategy matters as much as memorization on the California bar exam. So, if you found this breakdown helpful, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share because every smart study decision adds up.